The real reason Freddie Mercury changed his name, it wasn't what you think. September 5th, 1946. A birth certificate was signed in Stone Town, Zanzibar. The name written in careful script, Farrokh Bulsara. But what happened in a dimly lit apartment in New York City 24 years later would bury that name forever. The official story, everyone thinks they know it. A young immigrant wanting to fit into Western rock culture. A theatrical persona demanding a theatrical name. Mercury. Quick, bright, dangerous. They were all wrong. The truth was darker, more personal, more devastating than anyone could imagine. It started with a phone call at 2:47 a.m., a voice from across the Atlantic. A secret that would force Farrokh Bulsara to disappear completely, and Freddie Mercury to be born from the ashes of a life that could never exist again. What you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about the most enigmatic frontman in rock history. Because the real reason Freddie changed his name wasn't about fame, success, or image. It was about survival. New York City, 1970. The concrete jungle where dreams come to die and legends are forged in shadow. Farrokh Bulsara stepped off the Greyhound bus at Port Authority, carrying nothing but a battered suitcase and a secret that burned in his chest like acid. The scholarship to the Fashion Institute of Technology was his golden ticket to America. But golden tickets, he would soon learn, often come with hidden prices. His roommate, David Mitchell, was everything Farrokh wasn't. Blonde, confident, born with the kind of American swagger that opened doors before you even knocked. Their shared apartment in Greenwich Village was cramped, but it was theirs. A refuge from the world that seemed determined to remind them they were different. "You need to change that name, man," David said one evening, as they shared instant noodles and cheap wine. "Farrokh sounds like, I don't know, foreign, threatening. Americans don't trust what they can't pronounce." Farrokh stared out the window at the neon-lit streets below. Somewhere in those streets, other immigrants were making the same calculations, trading pieces of their identity for pieces of acceptance. But Farrokh's calculations were different, more desperate, because 3 weeks earlier, he'd received that phone call, the one that changed everything. Hey, before we continue with this incredible story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without notice. Just take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content that's coming up. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. That helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The phone had rung in the dead of night, like a death knell. "Farrokh!" The voice was his father's, but strained, desperate. "You must never come back." Bomi Bulsara was not a man given to dramatics. A government accountant, methodical, careful. But that night, across the crackling international connection, he sounded terrified. "The revolution, it's getting worse. They're targeting Parsis. They're targeting anyone with connections to the old regime. Your name is on a list." Farrokh felt the blood drain from his face. "What list?" "A death list. Someone betrayed us. Told them about your grandfather's work with the British government. About the family business. About you." The Zanzibar Revolution of 1964 had been brutal, but by 1970, Farrokh thought it was history. He was wrong. The aftermath was still claiming lives, still settling scores. "If you come back, they will kill you," his father whispered. "If they find you anywhere under that name, they will find a way to kill you." The line went dead. Farrokh sat in the darkness of his New York apartment, holding a telephone that had just delivered his death sentence. Not death by disease or accident, but death by identity. The name his parents had given him, the name that connected him to centuries of Parsi heritage, was now a target painted on his back. David found him there at dawn, still staring at the phone. "What happened, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," Farouk whispered. "My own. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It was methodical, deliberate, like watching someone carefully erase themselves and redraw the lines. First came the clothes. Farouk's conservative button-downs and pressed slacks disappeared. In their place, tight jeans, flowing shirts, leather jackets that caught the light like armor. Then came the hair. The careful, conservative cut gave way to something wild, untamed, something that defied convention and demanded attention. But the name was the hardest part. "Mercury," he said one evening, testing the word on his tongue like a foreign language. They were in a dive bar in the East Village, surrounded by the kind of artists and misfits who understood reinvention. "Like the planet?" David asked. "Like the element. Quick, bright, impossible to hold." Farouk, no, Freddie now, raised his glass. "Freddie Mercury. It has a ring to it, doesn't it?" What he didn't tell David was where the inspiration really came from. Not astronomy or chemistry, but desperation. Mercury was the Roman god of messengers, of boundaries crossed, of transitions between worlds. Perfect for someone who existed between identities, between lives, between the person he was born to be and the person he needed to become to survive. The first time he signed Freddie Mercury on a document, his hand shook. It felt like signing his own death certificate. The death of Farouk Bulsara and the birth of someone new. Someone untraceable. Someone safe. But safety, Freddie would soon learn, was an illusion. Because you can change your name, change your clothes, change your entire identity, but you can't change the past. And the past has a way of finding you. Los Angeles, 1975. Queen had just finished recording A Night at the Opera at Cherokee Studios. The album that would make them legends was complete, but Freddie Mercury was about to face the ghosts he thought he'd buried. The hotel room was luxurious, a far cry from that cramped Greenwich Village apartment. Silk sheets, champagne on ice, the trappings of success. But success couldn't protect him from the envelope that had been slipped under his door. Inside, a single photograph, black and white, slightly blurred. A young man in Zanzibar, standing next to his family. Happy, innocent, alive. On the back, written in careful script, "We know who you really are." Freddie's hands trembled as he turned the photograph over again. The young man in the picture looked so much like him, yet so different. That was Farouk Bulsara, the person he used to be before fear taught him to hide. The phone rang. He knew he shouldn't answer it, but something compelled him to pick up. "Hello, Farouk." The voice was unfamiliar, but the accent was unmistakable. East African, with traces of Indian ancestry. Like his own voice used to sound before he learned to belly it beneath British inflections and rock star swagger. "Who is this?" "Someone who knew your family. Someone who survived what they did not." Freddie's blood ran cold. "My parents are alive." "They're in England now?" "Your parents, yes. But what about your cousin Ravi? What about old Mr. Patel who used to run the spice shop? What about the dozen other families who couldn't escape when the killing started again?" The room began to spin. Freddie sat heavily on the bed, the photograph still clutched in his shaking hand. "What do you want? Justice, recognition, the truth about what happened to our people while you were playing rock star in America and England." "I was protecting myself, protecting my family, by erasing us, by pretending we never existed, by becoming so thoroughly someone else that you forgot where you came from." The caller's voice was cold now, accusatory. "You have a platform, Farouk. Millions of people listen to you. And you use it to sing about love and parties and fantasy while our people are forgotten?" The line went dead. Freddie sat in the silence of his luxury hotel room, surrounded by the evidence of his success, holding a photograph of the life he'd abandoned. For the first time in 5 years, he whispered his real name aloud. Farrokh Bulsara. It sounded like a prayer or a confession. The tour continued, but something had changed. In interviews, Freddie became more evasive about his background. On stage, his performances took on a desperate intensity, as if he were trying to outrun something that followed him from city to city. Brian May noticed it first. "Freddie's different," he told Roger Taylor after a show in Detroit. "He's always been theatrical, but this is something else. It's like he's performing for his life." He was, because the phone calls kept coming. Different voices, but always the same message. Remember us. Honor us. Stop hiding from what you are. In Chicago, Freddie found himself in a Zoroastrian temple at 3 a.m., kneeling before the sacred fire that connected him to his ancestors. The priest, an elderly man with kind eyes, didn't recognize the famous rock star beneath the hood and shadow. "What troubles you, my son?" "I've forgotten who I am. Or maybe I never knew." "Identity is not a single thing," the priest said softly. "It is like fire. It can burn in many forms, take many shapes, but the essence remains the same." What if the shapes contradict each other? What if being one thing means destroying another? The priest was quiet for a long moment. "Then you must find a way to honor both, or risk losing yourself entirely." Freddie left the temple as the sun was rising, but he carried the priest's words with him. That night, at the concert in Chicago Stadium, he did something he had never done before. In the middle of "We Are the Champions," he stopped singing. The band played on, confused, as Freddie walked to the edge of the stage and spoke directly to the 20,000 people in the audience. "This song is dedicated to everyone who has ever had to choose between who they were born to be and who they needed to become to survive. To everyone who carries two names, two histories, two hearts." His voice cracked slightly. "And to those who didn't survive long enough to make that choice." The crowd was silent, sensing they were witnessing something raw, something real. Freddie returned to the microphone and sang the final chorus with an intensity that left everyone in that arena changed. But he sang it not as Freddie Mercury, the rock god, but as something more complex, a fusion of Farrokh Bulsara's pain and Freddie Mercury's power. For the first time since that night in New York, he felt whole. Montreux, Switzerland, 1991. The final recordings, the last performances, the end approaching like a shadow that had been following him for 20 years. Freddie sat by Lake Geneva, watching the sun set over the Alps. In his hand, a letter he had written but would never send. A letter to Farrokh Bulsara, the boy he had buried to become the man the world adored. "I kept your secrets," he whispered to the gathering darkness, "but I also kept your heart." The letter contained the truth he had never spoken publicly, that Freddie Mercury wasn't just a stage name or a rebranding. He was a refugee identity, a survival mechanism, a way to protect not just himself, but everyone he loved from the violence that had shattered their world. But over the years, something beautiful had happened. Freddie Mercury had become real. Not a mask, but a fusion. The artistry of Farrokh Bulsara channeled through the fearless persona of Freddie Mercury. The immigrant boy's sensitivity merged with the rock star's courage. In his final interviews, when reporters asked about his background, Freddie would smile that enigmatic smile and say, "I am precisely as much of a mystery as I need to be." What they didn't understand was that the mystery wasn't evasion. It was protection. Protection for the family still living quietly in England. Protection for the communities still facing persecution. Protection for the boy from Zanzibar, who had learned that sometimes survival requires becoming someone new. The name change wasn't about rejecting who he was. It was about ensuring he could continue to be. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Freddie folded the letter and placed it in his jacket pocket. Some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud, even decades later. Some secrets served a purpose larger than the individual who carried them. But the music told the real story. Every song, a bridge between two worlds. Every performance, a celebration of the complexity of identity. Every moment on stage, a declaration that you can be more than one thing, carry more than one name, love more than one version of yourself. The last photograph of Freddie Mercury was taken 3 days before he died. In it, he's looking directly at the camera, but his eyes seem to see something beyond the frame. Something that looks remarkably like a young man standing in the doorway of a spice shop in Stone Town, Zanzibar, waiting to be remembered. Some names die with their owners. Others live forever, carrying secrets that will never fully be told. Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991. But somewhere in the space between legend and truth, between Freddie and Farouk, something eternal was born. And that, perhaps, was the real magic. Not the transformation from one identity to another, but the courage to live fully as both. The mystery remains, as it should. Because some stories are too important to finish, too dangerous to complete, too beautiful to solve. What we're left with is the music, the performances, the glimpses of a man who understood that identity is not a prison but a prism, refracting light into colors we never knew existed. Listen closely to the recordings. Sometimes, if you know what to listen for, you can hear both voices singing. Farouk and Freddie, separate and together, creating something that neither could have achieved alone. The real reason Freddie Mercury changed his name? It wasn't what you think. It was everything you think and more than you could ever imagine.